Good day and thank you for joining us on Beetv Global News at 12. I am Liberateman Johanna. Now the news in details. The Congress of the Republic of Peru has voted to remove President José Jerry from office just 4 months into his administration, following allegations that he had an undisclosed meeting with a Chinese businessman. The report.
Maker said the meeting, which were not officially declared in the president's schedule or transparency filings, raised serious concerns about possible conflicts of interest, influence peddling, and breaches of national security protocols. The motion to oust the president secured the required majority after an emergency debate in which several political parties argued that the secrecy surrounding the engagement undermined public trust in the executive office. According to congressional leaders, the investigation focused on whether the businessman sought preferential access to government contracts, infrastructure negotiations, or mining-related concessions. While no criminal conviction has yet been announced, legislators maintain that the lack of disclosure alone constituted moral incapacity, a constitutional ground frequently used in Peru to remove sitting presidents. In a brief statement before the vote, Jerry denied wrongdoing and insisted the meeting were informal discussions intended to attract foreign investments. He accused political opponents of orchestrating a rushed impeachment to destabilize his reform agenda. Supporters inside and outside parliament described the proceedings as politically motivated, while critics argue that transparency rules must apply fully to the presidency. The removal continues Peru's prolonged period of political instability. Over the past decade, the country has seen multiple presidents impeached, forced to resign, or investigated for corruption, creating recurring confrontations between the executive branch and Congress. Analysts warn that the latest ouster could deepen investors' uncertainty, delay policy decisions, and trigger fresh protests among citizens frustrated by constant leadership changes. Under constitutional succession rules, the next official in a presidential line of authority is expected to assume interim leadership pending either confirmation by Congress or the scheduling of early national elections. Security agencies have meanwhile been placed on alert in the capital amid fears of demonstrations from both pro- and anti-government groups. Government ministries have been instructed to continue normal operations as the transition process unfolds, while electoral authorities say they are prepared to organize a vote if lawmakers approve an accelerated election timetable. Evelyn is reporting for Beetv News.
German pharmaceutical and life sciences company Bayer has announced that its subsidiary Monsanto has agreed to pay up to $7.25 billion to resolve both current and future lawsuits in the United States, claiming that the herbicide Roundup caused cancer. The report.
The proposed settlement is part of Bayer's continuing effort to draw a line on the long-running legal battles linked to Roundup, a widely used weed killer containing glyphosate. Thousands of plaintiffs in the U.S. have alleged that exposure to the product led to non-Hodgkin lymphoma and other cancers. Bayer has consistently maintained that scientific studies and regulatory reviews show the product is safe when used as directed. According to the company, the financial package would cover a large share of existing claims while also creating a framework to manage potential future cases. The plan includes funds set aside specifically for unresolved lawsuits and mechanisms intended to reduce prolonged litigation. Bayer said resolving the dispute is aimed at providing greater financial certainty and allowing the company to focus on its core pharmaceutical and agricultural businesses. The firm has already paid billions of dollars in previous settlements and jury awards related to Roundup claims since acquiring Monsanto in 2018. Legal representatives for plaintiffs are expected to review the new proposal, and court approval may be required for parts of the settlement structure, particularly those dealing with future claims. Despite the continuing lawsuits, Bayer insists it will continue defending the safety of glyphosate-based products in court and before regulators, while pursuing negotiated settlements where appropriate. The round of litigation has remained one of the most expensive and complex product liability disputes in recent corporate history, significantly affecting Bayer's market value and legal strategy in the United States. Evelyn is reporting for Beetv News.
Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet told Reuters on Tuesday that Thai forces have not withdrawn from parts of Cambodian territory despite a ceasefire and a U.S.-brokered peace accord, highlighting ongoing tensions along the long-disputed border between the two Southeast Asian neighbors. The report. Hon Manet, speaking in his first international media interview, said that Thai troops remain deployed well inside Cambodian recognized areas of the frontier, laying shipping containers, barbed wires, and other obstacles that prevent residents from returning to their homes. He described the situation as a violation of Cambodian sovereignty and territorial integrity and said it continued despite a December 27, 2025 ceasefire that halted weeks of renewed fighting. The ceasefire followed the worst clashes along the 817-kilometer border in more than a decade, which erupted in mid-2025 and displaced hundreds of thousands of civilians. An earlier peace agreement signed in October 2025 with the involvement of the former U.S. President Donald Trump and Malaysia's Prime Minister broke down within weeks, and the December truce temporarily froze hostilities. Hon Manet, who succeeded his father, Hon Shen, as Prime Minister in 2023 and was in Washington for a meeting of Trump's Board of Peace called on Bangkok to allow a Joint Boundary Commission, JBC, to begin technical work on demarcating the contested border. He said the current positions of Thai forces extend beyond even Thailand's own unilateral claim lines and must be addressed through agreed-upon mechanisms. Thailand has rejected the accusation of occupation, saying its troops are maintaining agreed positions as part of de-escalation measures and denying that they hold territory illegally. Thai officials argue that the current troop deployments along the frontier are necessary for stability and to prevent further clashes. The border conflict rooted in a century-old dispute over colonial-era boundary lines and significant cultural sites remains fragile despite the ceasefire raising concerns in Phnom Penh that tensions could reignite unless a durable settlement is reached. Temitope Oluwafemi reporting for BTV News.
U.S. equities finished modestly higher on Tuesday, February 17, 2026, after a choppy session. The stock market struggled early before recovering later in the day. Major indexes ended with slight gains as technology shares rebounded from earlier losses and financial stocks provided added support to the market. The report.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.07%, about 32 points, to 49,533.19. The S&P 500 added 0.10%, about 7.05 points, to 6,843.22. And the Nasdaq Composite climbed 0.14%, about 31.71 points, to 22,578.38. Technology shares, which dragged on the market earlier in the session, rebounded strongly in the final hours of trading. The S&P 500 information technology sector, which had fallen as much as 1.5% intraday, ended the day up around 0.5%, supported by gains in Nvidia and Apple. Losses in some major tech names, such as Microsoft and Oracle, were offset by these gains. Despite the recovery in large tech companies, pressure remained in parts of the tech sector. The S&P 500 software index finished lower by about 1.6%, with stocks like Intuit and Cadence Design among the biggest decliners. Financial stocks helped lift the market overall. Banks such as Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan chased advanced, which contributed to pushing the Dow into positive territory after earlier losses. Other sectors showed mixed performance. Consumer staples underperformed, led by a roughly 7% drop in General Mills after the company cut its annual sales and profit forecasts. In contrast, some individual stocks posted strong gains. Norwegian Cruise Line surged about 12% after news of an activist investor stake. Fiserv climbed nearly 7% on reported investor interest, and Massimo jumped over 30% after a major acquisition deal was announced. Investor sentiment remained cautious, with concerns about artificial intelligence disrupting business models continue to weigh on some technology and software sectors. Traders also watched for upcoming U.S. economic data, especially the personal consumption expenditure inflation report, which could influence expectations for future Federal Reserve interest rate actions. Overall, U.S. stocks closed with only modest gains after a turbulent trading day that saw early weakness give way to late session strength, reflecting both sector rotation and mixed investor confidence. Naomi Ewere reporting from BTV News.
Iran and the United States have reached an understanding of a set of guiding principles during indirect nuclear talks in Geneva. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Iraqi said on Tuesday, but he stressed that this does not mean a final agreement is close. The report.
The second round of negotiations, mediated by Oman, produced what Tehran describes as broad agreement on foundational principles that will shape further discussions. According to Iranian officials, the talks were more serious and constructive than previous rounds and laid the groundwork for drafting text for a potential agreement. Iraqi told state media that different ideas were presented and seriously discussed, and that both sides now have a set of guiding principles that will serve as the basis for future work. He added that progress has been made, but cautioned that the negotiation process is just beginning and that narrowing differences between the two sides will take time. Officials said that after exchanging draft tests of a possible deal, the parties will agree on a date for a third round of talks. Iraqi emphasized that reaching an understanding of principles does not mean a deal is imminent. The discussions took place against a backdrop of heightened tensions in the Middle East. The United States has increased its military presence in the region, and Iran has conducted military drills and temporarily closed parts of the Strait of Hormuz for security reasons. Both sides remain far apart on core issues such as uranium enrichment limits and other contentious elements. U.S. officials also noted the progress, describing the outcome as measured and acknowledging that much work remains before any final agreement can be reached. Naomi Ewere, reporting from Beetv News.
J.C. Jackson, the trailblazing civil rights leader, Baptist minister and political activist, has died at the age of 84, his family announced. Jackson, widely recognized for his charisma and unwavering commitment to social justice, played a pivotal role in the American civil rights movement and was a close ally of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The report.
Born on October 8, 1941 in Greenville, South Carolina, Jackson rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most prominent African-American leaders of his generation. He became a Baptist minister and soon entered the national civil rights stage, working alongside King in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and participating in major campaigns against racial segregation, voter suppression, and economic inequality. Jackson gained national attention in the 1980s when he launched two historical bids for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1984 and 1988. These campaigns broke racial barriers, energized minority voters, and cemented his reputation as a powerful voice for social and economic justice. Throughout his life, Jackson advocated for civil rights, labor rights, and international human rights. He founded organizations such as Operation Push, People United to Serve Humanity, and the Rainbow Push Coalition, which focused on empowering marginalized communities and promoting political activism. His advocacy extended beyond the United States as he became involved in global peace and humanitarian efforts. Jackson was also known for his mentorship, inspiring generations of activists and leaders to continue the fight for equality and justice. He was a frequent commentator on social and political issues, using his platform to call for reforms and encourage civil engagement. He is survived by his family, who confirmed his passing. Though they have not publicly disclosed the cause of death, Jackson leaves behind a legacy as one of the most influential civil rights leaders of the 20th and 21st century. Temitope Oluwafemi reporting for Beetv News.
You're still watching Beetv Global News. While we go on a short break, do stay with us.
I am Amade Dexmod Enabulele, the Executive Chairman, Edo State Sports Commission. Esteemed people of Edo State, the second Niger Delta Games are here. I warmly invite every resident on behalf of Edo State government to come and witness the excitement of the biggest regional games taking place right here in Benin City from 20th to 27th February 2026. The opening ceremony is scheduled to hold at the iconic Samuel Bonodia Stadium on Friday, beginning from 5 p.m. I encourage families, youths, and sport lovers to come out in large numbers to support the athletes and enjoy world-class competition as we host the rest of Niger Delta people in our dear states. Together, let us showcase the hospitality and passion of Edo State as we make this edition of the Games memorable. Thank you.
Welcome back, and now to the business segment. President Bola Tinubu has called for reforms to the global financial system, arguing that African countries face disproportionately high borrowing costs due to persistent misjudgment by dominant international credit rating agency. In an opinion article, the Nigerian leader said Africa is paying too much to borrow and stressed that calls to eliminate the so-called African premium, the perceived gap between risk assessment and the continent's economic reality, can no longer be ignored. The report.
President Tinubu criticized the influence of the three major global rating agencies, Fitch Ratings, Moody's, and S&P Global Ratings, stating that their evaluations heavily shape investor decisions and Africa's access to international capital. He cited a 2023 report by the United Nations Development Programme, which estimated that rating-related distortions cost African countries about $75 billion annually in excess, interest payments and lost lending opportunities. Noting that only 3 African countries currently hold investment-grade ratings, despite growth projections from the International Monetary Fund that rank the continent among the world's fastest-growing regions, Tinubu described plans to establish an African credit rating agency as a necessary corrective. He said such an institution would help address what he termed a major weakness of existing agencies, limited on-the-ground presence and insufficient understanding of local economic conditions. Concerns are mounting in Nigeria's aviation sector over rising airport and ticket charges, with retired Group Captain John Ojikutu warning that new levies by the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria could further strain struggling operators. He said multiple taxation threatens the sustainability of aviation businesses and may weaken the industry. Ojikutu urged FAN to properly assess its existing revenue from passenger traffic, flight operations, and cargo across its airports before introducing additional charges. He estimated that current income from passenger service charges, landing and parking fees should amount to at least 400 billion annually, excluding other revenue sources. He also criticized FAN's spending priorities, alleging inadequate investment in critical infrastructure such as perimeter and security fencing, despite recommendations made in a 2004 audit by the International Civil Aviation Organization. The federal government on Tuesday launched the Growth Fund to provide affordable financing for over 6,000 young entrepreneurs trained under the Inspire, Create, Start and Scale program in a move aimed at tackling the persistent funding gap confronting micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria. The initiative, powered by the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, was unveiled in Abuja. The event was in partnership with the German Society for International Cooperation, the Society for Organization, Planning and Training, and the Kaduna Business School. Speaking at the official launch, the Minister of Youth Development, Ayodele Olawande, said the government was committed to ensuring that training programs for young Nigerians translate into real economic opportunities. He noted that access to finance remained a major constraint to youth-led businesses, stressing that the new facility would address the challenge. Naomi Ewere, reporting from Beetv News.
And in entertainment news, Nigerian's music star Tems and Burna Boy have set a new record as the African artist with the most entries on the Billboard Hot 100, surpassing South African rock band Stadia. The duo moved ahead after earning new chart entries through their features on J. Cole's latest album, The Fall Off. Bounce Road Blues, featuring Tems and Future, debuted at number 34, while Only You featuring Burna Boy entered at number 78, bringing both Nigerian artists to 8 Hot 100 entry each, the highest tally for any African art. The report.
In 2026, Thames has landed 3 songs on the Hot 100, Radiance with Dave, What You Need, and the newly debuted Bounce Road Blues. The feat gives her the highest number of entries by any African artist on the chart this year, reinforcing her strong international run and growing influence in the US market. Burna Boy, on his part, has extended his streak as the first African artist to appear on the Hot 100 for 6 consecutive years. Since 2021, he has earned at least 1 entry each year, with his latest appearance coming through Only You. The milestone further highlights his consistency and enduring global appeal, reinforcing his status as one of Africa's leading crossover stars. In another development, Inado Odighe has announced the birth of a son, revealing that motherhood has kept her largely out of the public eye in recent months. The Nollywood actress shared the update with fans, explaining that she welcomed a child a few months ago and has since devoted her time and attention to her new role as a mother. Inado married filmmaker Tola Odunshi in an intimate civil ceremony in February 2025. Since then, she has focused on family life, describing motherhood as the most important chapter of her life so far. In her message, she assured supporters that her absence has been intentional as she prioritizes raising her son. The announcement marks Enado's first major public update since becoming a mother. She concluded by promising to return to the public space soon, signaling plans to balance her family responsibilities with her career in Nollywood. Nearly a decade after stepping away from mixed martial arts, Ronda Rousey has announced her return to the sport for a high-profile bout against fellow former fighter Gina Carano. Rousey confirmed in a statement that the matchup, billed as a major super fight in women's combat sports, will mark her first MMA appearance since retiring from active competition. The fight is scheduled to home live on Netflix on May 16 and is being promoted by Most Valuable Promotions, co-founded by Jake Paul. Carano last competed in professional MMA in 2009 before transitioning to an acting career, while Rousey dominated the sport during her prime, becoming one of its biggest global stars. Following her MMA career, Rousey performed with WWE until 2023 and pursued acting roles in major film franchises. Carano has also built a career in film and television since leaving competition. Their upcoming clash signals a significant moment for women's combat sports, drawing renewed attention to two of the sport's most recognizable figures. Naomi Ewere, reporting from Beetv News.
Lastly, on sports news, Nigeria's women national football team will face Cameroon into international friendlies next month as part of preparations for the 2026 Women African Cup of Nations (WAFCON). The Nigerian Football Federation (NFF) confirmed that the matches would be played in Yaoundé during the FIFA Women's International window from February 24 to March 7, 2026, with fixtures scheduled for February 28 and March 3rd against the Indomitable Lionesses. The friendlies followed the cancellation of a proposed four-nation invitational tournament involving Nigeria, Benin, Senegal and Ivory Coast, which was called off due to logistical challenges. NFF General Secretary Mohamed Sanusi said arrangements for the Cameroon matches were finalized in collaboration with the Cameroonian Football Federation, stressing that the objective is adequately prepare the team to defend their continental title and secure qualification for the next FIFA Women's World Cup. The 13th edition of WAFCON, organized by the Confederation of African Football, will be held in Morocco from March 17th to April 3rd, 2026, with the four semi-finalists earning automatic qualification for the 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup in Brazil. Nigeria remained the most successful nation in the tournament history with a record 10 titles, including their most recent triumph in Morocco. And that's it in our Global News Update. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next is our news update at 3. I am Liberateman Johanna. Bye for now.
Audio Jungle.
America.